Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It's great to see you. Oh gosh, I almost said happy Monday. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Oh dear, oh dear. It is great to see everybody. Believe it or not, I have still been sick and I am fast mending now. So it is all going well. Thank you so much for your messages and all of that. Yeah, it's been a poorly few weeks, and it's made it hard. So that is why I'm running the show different days this week. I hope you caught the live hook in with Kirsten earlier in the week. So my days this week are today, Wednesday, and we are going to continue looking at the current issue of Rug Cooking Magazine. Have you also received your ATHA magazine, Association of Traditional Rug Cooking Artists? Have you received that in the mail yet, if you are a subscriber? Mine came and I haven't had time to look at it yet. I want to look at this issue too, because so far what we've done with this current issue of Rug Cooking Magazine is check out the article, the phenomenal article by Kathleen, I think Haywood, right? Let me see, Harwood, and Devin Ryder, right? That's what we did last week. I want to look at some other features in here that I think are exceptional. We're going to do that today. But first, let me say hello to the people who are logged on. Jane, great to see you. It is wild and wet and windy in Wales. And in Heidi, in Belgium, how is it? Oh, we have the same weather. It has been so rainy here. I mean, it's crazy. It's been rainy for, well, obviously there have been lots of weather problems around, and ours is the least of them, all things considered, in Florida and Nova Scotia and everything. But it has been wet, and that is a mild complaint comparatively. But yeah, it's been rough weather the last few days. Lisa, great to see you. Overcast there in Pennsylvania as well. Mom, great to see you. Good to be there with you too. And Cindy, good morning. Robin, good morning. Dave, good morning in Toronto. Dave, I don't know if you get Rug Cooking Magazine, but I am going to take a look at the rug cooking artist in Toronto who has made well, she this article revolves around her walking around the streets of Toronto, looking at these beautiful sort of graffiti murals that are up there during the COVID time still, and making rugs based on those designs. I thought that's of like very particular interest for you. Crystal, great to see you. Anita, happy Wednesday. Lots of Canadian friends logged on today. Chrissy, great to see you. I love coffee time too. I actually just stopped and got a. Do you all have Dunkin' Donuts, or is that just a regional thing? I'm thinking by now they must be everywhere, but it is my favorite. I never go for the stronger stuff. I really love Dunkin'. Mm. Cats Gallery, great to see you. So I'll just start off on a personal note by saying so many people have written because I was not doing well for quite a while, as you know. Part of it's cuckoo, part of it's depression, part of it was I was having a bit of a health scare, and I had an MRI last week, and many of you knew that and sent messages, and I just wanted to say everything is fine. Nothing came up that is deadly or worrying, so I am very relieved, and that certainly made a shift in how I'm feeling and my mood and all that stuff. So thank you so much for all the notes that I got. I was in a very bad place and I was very worried, as you can imagine. It's hard to hide, but everything is absolutely fine. So it's all manageable stuff. And thank you so much. I return all of the love that I got, and I really, really am grateful and appreciate it. Stephanie, good to see you in Arizona. Melanie, great to see you. Brooks Ray, first time from Oklahoma City. You are so welcome. I am very happy you're here. Great to see you. Linda B., Rainy in New Jersey, absolutely. This whole part of the country, I think we are just under the same huge cloud. Linda, and you logged on from your vacation. Great to see you. I feel a bit better. Absolutely. Dunkin' Donuts used to be in Canada. Interesting, interesting. I remember years ago when, I lived in England for a long time and I was working in the theater there, and I went to school there for theater, years ago. There was like one Dunkin' Donuts in Piccadilly Circus, and that was it. And they didn't really have the same menu either. That is a thing with like American chains I've noticed abroad, because living in Amsterdam too, like in Kentucky Fried Chicken, they didn't have any of the same meals. They had chicken, but like in one form. They didn't have the mashed potatoes, the gravy, any of the accoutrements that I think we expect to see. And even McDonald's and Burger King, the burgers were always super gamey, like they were actually meat. Funny how it can differ from place to place, right? right before I logged on, I was sipping my coffee and I started to look at this because I'm very organized at this moment because we are doing this episode today on the Rug Cooking Magazine and catching up with that and finishing that conversation. But you know that this is going to be a big history month for us, talking about the history of rug cooking, history in general, crossing over inspiration, design. Design ideas, talking about composition and all different kinds of things in a historical context. So I'm looking a lot at Halloween and the holidays that are about to befall us again and already. And I just think it's so exciting. I'm really trying to make a thing out of the holidays this year because sometimes they catch me by surprise and I feel like I'm over a barrel and I don't have time to do the things I want to do. Well, this year I got a Halloween advent calendar too, so it's not just for Christmas this year. And I was looking at it and just thinking, man, there's so much. You see this little witch that appeared in that window there? There's so much good inspiration everywhere. But they are giving me horrible jokes like, what is a witch with poison ivy called? And the answer is an itchy witch. So you should obviously never repeat that. Never repeat that. There were some colossally bad ones. What was this one? How do you fix a damaged jack-o'-lantern? You use a pumpkin patch. See, I'm going to say these to the kids because they'll probably wet their pants laughing. This is like right up their alley. It's so bad. But I thought, what a charming way to bring in the month, this nice kind of, I think I might have got this from the Vermont Country Store or something like that. Maybe Yankee Candle, but that kind of thing. Barn dance in the background here, right? It's just such an atmospheric time of the year. I sat down yesterday because I have been trying to put together a pattern for October that is a good beginner's pattern with very simple lines. For me, that is almost impossible. I sit down to try to work on a simple design and I end up with the kitchen sink in it. And the opposite of simple. So I got so panicked, so panicked and teary and crazy and frustrated. I woke up at like 5 yesterday and I sat down at the dining room table and I started to work on sketches. And isn't it amazing how some of us unfortunately work best like under that kind of duress? Because it's like you have to inflict it upon yourself, which is masochistic in a way. And it's just, but the end result was great. So I did 4 designs that I'm going to hook really fast. I hooked for about maybe 2 hours all in yesterday. And I started this witch design that is super easy. Like a witch holding the hand of, and I haven't really articulated the face of the little black cat. He's standing up on his hind legs. When I have the background in, you'll be able to see. But it's a witch in silhouette, very simple body shape. All the color changing that's happening in her skirt is happening with patterned wools, so all kinds of like plaids and tweeds and herringbones. And then her little witch is, her little cat, her little black cat is going to be holding this orange pumpkin. So the hardest part in this composition will be the cat, but I'm going to put this up as a live class over Zoom and also a pattern, but it is at the end of the day quite simple. The witch, the silhouette of the cat, you could even leave out the pumpkin if that wasn't for you, or the face on the pumpkin and the stars, all that stuff. So I've been working simultaneously on quite a few pieces, and I feel that they're all coming along really well, which means that somehow heavens are smiling down upon me for this moment, and I will take it because you never know, right? Oh, thanks, Crystal. You know, I was debating right until the end last night whether I should take it out or not because I thought the background, do you see how I've got a lot of color changing happening in the background with purples? I don't have the stars in yet because I think I might be using some of my novelty yarns from like the dollar store, Ocean State Job Lot. Depending on where you're from, your store is going to be called something different. But you know how these super cheapy stores have often an aisle of crafts, and that includes yarns, and you get those crazy ladder yarns and eyelash and mohairs and they're all synthetics, right? But they're beautiful, not for blocking, not to put your iron down on, but they're beautiful for bling, right? And I thought I might do the stars in kinds of crazy, sparkly moonstone color and iridescent cranberry colors. And otherwise the background is purple, and I started plugging in the dress with 4 different prints of patterned wool. And it's just amazing how when you're hooking with patterned wool, it does all of the work for you, right? All you do is hook it. You're just hooking it straight down. I have no rhyme or reason, but it does all of the work, and that is a pleasure. It's so nice pulling up a loop and seeing what color you're getting next. It's very satisfying, as my kids would say. Ryan, great to see you. Chrissy says you got your October, November at the magazine. There's a shout out. Oh, is there a shout out? There's a shout out. I didn't know that to Ribbon Candy Hooking. Chrissy, thanks for letting me know. I didn't know that. I was going to open it live. I have it somewhere. How interesting is that? Did I get a shout out? Here it is. Let me open it live. Is it at the beginning, Chrissy? Interesting. I wonder what they're shouting out for. Of course, I do talk about them all of the time and promote the magazine. And it is, you know, we have two publications in our craft. If we were quilters, we'd have, honestly, 50 current publications or more. Ooh, oh gosh, I'm not going to get started. Oh, it smells so exciting. Oh, how funny is that? Oh, I'm looking for it. Not seeing it yet. I'm sure I'll find it. Interesting. Gosh, I hope I do find it. I don't usually read everything, you know what I mean? Same with any magazine, right? Huh, I'll have to check later. That is kind of exciting. It looks like an amazing issue, but let's stay focused. Uh-oh. That was already, I just fell off the rails right there. Let's come to what we're doing today. And that is, you know, I said when we started looking at this issue of Rug Hooking Magazine, there were a couple articles that I was really impatiently looking forward to looking at together with you. And Deb Smith retired as editor for Rug Hooking Magazine. She did. Mark Allison is in there now, and he is doing a fabulous job as well. I've been having close contact with him because, of course, the current book I'm working on is for Rug Hooking Magazine, and their publisher is Amory Press. By the way, my first book is coming out at the end of November, so I'll send you the links and all that. I'm putting them up on our Facebook group, which is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. But Mark has been wonderful to work with, and obviously Deb too. I mean, I loved working with Deb too. So sometimes changes are stressful, but in this case for me, this is great. It's been a seamless kind of crossover and a lot of fun. But it's good to know that too, because the style and the sort of subtle flavor of the magazine will probably change under the direction of a different person. And not for better or for worse, just different, isn't it? Just different. Like you take a walk in the woods, it's going to be beautiful this time of year, no matter what you choose. If you choose that walk or this walk, they're just different. And it's nice to have variety. So I'm excited about that too. Let's see, Chrissy. It's a wrap letter to the editor. Well, now I have to go back and check. Let me just see real fast. Interesting. Thank goodness for you all. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The theme is, oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Oh, she's specific. Okay, so Cheryl is saying, this part is called It's a Wrap. So she says, in the next issue, we're looking forward to highlighting our homes. You know, this must be because we were talking online about the shout outs for the next subjects, right? So every issue of ATHA has a different theme, and you're able to send in your rugs, and you should be sending in your rugs. And we talked about that a little bit. That's probably what this is in regard to. This theme is proving to be popular, and I am always so excited to see the many different ways that the theme can be interpreted. One of the cleverest interpretations was given on an online blog by Deanna David and Ribbon Candy Hooking. You can see the blog post, and then she gives the YouTube channel. Fantastic. Deanna has ideas like breaking down the theme to be a rug of a house or even a favorite room, your kitchen or bathroom, with your bath bombs and painted toenails at the edge of the tub, vacation house, or a home you have lived in and visited. Have you even received rugs of favorite house patterns? Great. Well, that's a great shout out. Thanks for letting me know. That makes me feel really happy. I feel better yet. So one of the things I wanted to do with the Rug Hooking Magazine is to look at my friend Haley Perry. Haley Perry's company is called Loop by Loop, and she is based in Warren, Rhode Island. I wanted to look at the article that she has in the current Rug Hooking Magazine. It's an excellent article, and I love the way that she's approaching her work in this particular collection of projects, right? So let's look at this together. This article is called Searching for My Visual Language. So let me come over here and let's come back to our slideshow. We've done, hang on with me for just a minute. I want to be sure. No, I might have to fool around a little bit. No, those are the Duncans. I do have to fool around a little bit. Hang on. Stick with me. This will be like our little recap from last week. All right. That was great. I loved the Duncans. And Kathleen Harwood wrote, I need to write back to her too. She had two beautiful Duncans, remember last week? Okay, here we go. So Haley's article is called Searching for My Visual Language. Tiny paintings, tiny painting leads to hooked mats. Definition, visual. And remember, she's using the word mats. Her aunt is Deanne Fitzpatrick, right? So she's very much in the habit of using the word mat in place of the word rug, I think. I prefer mat too because I think it's important to make a distinction between something size-wise, to distinguish the size by the word. I still really, and I said this this past weekend when I was teaching. By the way, before I forget, I'm teaching this coming weekend in person in Madison, Connecticut, the Halloween sugar skulls, the pumpkin sugar skulls, right? They're not skulls, they're pumpkin faces, super colorful. That class is open at Madison Wool. So if you want to see me there, I will be there. Look at the Madison Wool website in Madison, Connecticut. I'll be there this weekend. And I think in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm on Cape Cod doing a beginner hooking class. So I'll give you more details on that too if you're in the area. Last week when I was teaching, we were talking about, for me, the failure of the expression rug hooking a little bit at the beginning of the beginner's class, because I just feel like we don't, that is our placeholder. That is what we're saying, right? That we make hooked rugs. But I feel like it's so misleading and confusing. And I feel like it has sort of negative connotations for people who are possibly approaching the craft with the idea that they might get involved, right? Because it automatically, the use of the word rug it triggers the idea of something large and something utilitarian. And it's not obvious to everybody, particularly people who are not familiar with this craft, that you can make rugs that are just textile art. I don't mean just, I mean extra, mucho, textile art up on the wall. Not really a rug at all. And this is such a weird problem because in English we have more words than any other language. But this is where we seem to have a failure being able to express what we're making in a way that covers like all of our different styles and the sizes and the purposes of what we make. It's like if you were a writer, right, and you were writing in English and you wanted to tell somebody about the street where you live, well, there's going to be a million words, whether it's like a boulevard, like the Champs-Élysées, something big and wide and prominent, or whether it's a street or a road or a terrace or a trail or a lane or a close, right? Or, there are so many shades of meaning, but for us, not so much. So I like the fact that she's saying mats because we're talking about work that is very diminutive in size. It's very small. Dawn, great to see you. Oh, I'm so glad, Dawn. Make sure you share it. I'd love to see everything. Courtney, great to see you, and I'm so glad that Joy was okay in Florida, and thank you for the order. I'm putting that together. Searching for My Visual Language, tiny painting that leads to hooked mats, and again by Haley Perry, and her company is called Loop by Loop. And she writes at the top, definition, visual language, the marks, colors, icons, and arrangements that an artist uses in their work to express an idea or a feeling. So this is her spin on kind of inspiration. Now, all of the paintings that you're seeing, it says on here, measure 2.5 inches squared, and were created in 2021, so last year. Now, these are beautiful, simple abstracts that are super evocative, very mood-driven, very colorful, very abstract. And one of the reasons I love this article is because she is walking us through, oh, thank you, Chrissy, you pre-ordered, oh, you're kidding. You pre-ordered the book on Amazon, but they said delivery was in February 2023? You must be joking. Because it says on Amazon the book is coming out in November 20th, I thought. Oh, you must be joking. I'm going to have to call. I am so sorry. See, I'm not going to start. But I haven't heard from them. And when they changed the cover of the book, I wasn't aware of that and the title. It's okay. I already wrote it. It's done. It's out the door. I'm working on the next one. It's all good. But I'm going to get in touch and see if I can find out what I can find out about the release date, particularly if it's a moving target. I will let you know. Uh-oh. Okay. I think it's, oh, sorry, wrong one. That's the sheep, right? That looks familiar. All right, hang on. Courtney, that's headed your way. Not that one, but yours. So, it's so interesting to talk about the process that different people have. Oh, wow. And the date is February 2023. on my birthday, actually. Is it really the 28th? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. November, December, January, February. 3 months later? Good Lord. Okay. All right. Oh, I didn't see that. Thank you. Oh, good morning, Beth. Thank you for letting me know. I did not notice. I did not notice that. I don't check that page very often because, as you can imagine, it's a bit of a stressor for me that just having wrapped the whole thing up. I'm looking forward to it coming out. I'm looking forward to promoting it. Thank you for keeping me up to date. Holy mackerel. Everybody has a different process when they are creating an original project, right? And this is one of the things that I think we don't talk about enough. So I run the composition classes every month, Design Like. This month it's Design Like the fairy tale storybook. So we'll be looking at artists like from the golden age of fairy tales, right? Like the 1890s to the 1930s, like Arthur Rackham and Kate Greenaway, sort of Beatrix Potter, Thornton Burgess, like these people who are very prominent, Maxfield Parrish, storybook illustrators, children's book illustrators through that time. Every month it's different. And every month I try to think of different ways of connecting people who are not necessarily designers or have an art background, how to connect them to ideas that bring them to a certain style, right to the doorstep, right? The door is open. So that's what I try to do with the design classes. But I think in general, everybody creates differently, right? So in the case of Haley, she has found that in making these little abstract watercolors, sizes 2.5 by 2.5, she has found great inspiration in these small studies. More specifically, she has found great inspiration in watercolor as the sort of segue between a textile piece, right, a fiber art piece, and her imagination. So she is using watercolors as the middleman. You could use anything as the middleman. Some people will just take a Sharpie and have their backing fabric out and just draw straight on it. And that's the way it goes, right? Just like those early rug hookers taking a piece of charcoal from the fire and drawing onto their backing fabric and then starting to realize it by filling it in. Everybody will work differently, right? So it's important for you to think to yourself, especially if you are starting to be a designer and you're starting to want to do some of your own original work, and amen to that, right? If you're feeling that way, then think about what you've done in the past that you're proud of, that you feel comfortable with, that you feel like competent within. Because if it's watercolor, that's a great way to get an image going. If it's colored pencils, if it's just a Sharpie on printer paper, whatever it is, if it's using a computer, right, a computer program, there's so much graphic stuff that's available through computer apps at this point. There's so many different ways to attack. So this is going to be the way that Haley shows us she is realizing her visual language. So she says, I think of my art practice as solving a problem of my own creation, and that I am constantly making challenges for myself to stretch my creativity. In fact, this is one of the most exciting parts of consistent art making, watching ideas grow and morph and change. I believe that you only need a handful of creative ideas to make your next 5 years of rugs. Well, that's an interesting idea. With each rug, you will only need to skew the format or colors or some other challenge. Now, that's interesting. I haven't read this yet. I'm reading it with you for the first time. That's interesting because when you think about it, this is the way that fine artists work, right? So not everybody who does rug making is in that gallery mindset. We've talked about that quite a bit. Not everybody is there. But if you think about it, when you see people who work specifically in fine art fields, like the end game being a gallery show, they tend to be working in the style that Haley's describing here, where they have an idea, they evolve it for quite a long time. Think about famous painters and like their blue periods or their yellow periods and how they get into a groove. They really flesh out everything that they can within the groove, and then it's like cat coming out of the litter box. They're gone. They're on to the next thing. Musicians as well tend to work with this kind of a formula onto the next thing, and it's very different. But it is a common thing with many kinds of artists to work in the same pocket for a long spell. For us as rug hookers, we tend to be more project based, so we go project to project, And I think the sort of revolving door aspect of working that way is appealing to a lot of rug hookers. But if you are becoming more of a designer in your heart, it might be that you want to check in with yourself and decide whether this concept is something for you and think, well, hey, I did come to think of it, I did do a series of rugs with, for example, tomatoes in them. Maybe this is my thing right now. Maybe I'm evolving it. I know one of our buddies who logs on to the live chat did a series of rugs where she was featured as like the main character, the crow, in all of them. And it was a whole series. Think of the Judy rugs. Help me out, Canadian artist who I absolutely adore. I know you'll get me there. There's a lot of Canadians on there. All the Judy rugs with the lighthouses, right? Go ahead and put the name in the thread when you think of it, because my brain is like washed right now. You know, Melanie, no, it's not that you are not a talented artist because you get nervous when you don't have a pattern to work with. It's that you are maybe more technical and you like to do the technical part of it, and the design part of it is not as interesting or as obvious to you, right? So you should always go for the part that you like the most. If it's the filling in the pattern, then that is the more technical part. And you should go for it. You should stick with that part that you like. There's no reason to stretch outside your comfort zone if you don't feel like it. Absolutely not, right? Never work against yourself. You will not win. Yourself, the elf, is going to win every time. So it's not a question of good, better, best. It's just a question of where do I fall in the spectrum of the process, right? Am I paint by number, right? Do I like to be told this goes here, and as I fill it in, I feel a great sense of satisfaction, and then it's complete and I feel really pleased, and that's a feeling I can't describe? Or do you see something and you immediately take a Sharpie out and you start crossing things out or wiggling lines over, or you flip it over and start something from scratch because you think, I thought I liked this, but I don't like it. I'm going to go out on a limb and do my own thing. Those are two extremes. And all of those shades in the middle are most of us, right? Hi, Allie. Laura Kenny, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, she's amazing. But she's been doing this kind of series for quite a time. So, all right, I am so not focused, am I? Let's see. Making a series of rugs from one or two ideas helps us grow as designers and storytellers. This is Haley Perry's article. Working a series allows you to practice, compare, and contrast. Well, that makes sense, because if you are working a series of your own design and invention, then you are talking about comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. That's a very good point. A series of rugs also helps us to uncover our personal visual language. Your visual language is a series of marks, themes, icons, and palettes that you make a habit of using within your artwork. I recommend allowing your intuition to drive your choices and then reflect upon those choices after you make them. When you start to see a pattern emerge, you can claim that that choice part of your unique personal language, and that is your voice. It's natural to grow this personal language when things get too comfortable and formulaic. Pushing yourself into new challenges is part of solving the problem. Last year, in an effort to add different shapes and colors into my abstract work, I started painting small 2.5-inch square paintings with watercolor as a stress-relieving activity. I put no pressure on playing around with this new medium, but I soon realized that the immense joy I felt while working on these pieces would surely find its way into my rug hooking work. With watercolor, I was able to let the color flow more freely than when I draw with a colored pencil or pen. I could layer the colors, and I was never really concerned with what kinds of marks I was making. I just had fun making small designs that I considered abstract landscapes. I made about 35 paintings, some good, some bad. Before I started seeing them, the repeating dashes, dots, arches, and stripes would lead to making a new series of rugs. With a newer rug series, I explored making shaped pieces instead of the more traditional squares and rectangles. I could see that my new series was about shapes. Making shaped pieces is something I've considered in the back of my mind for quite a while. I don't know if I would have realized that now is the right time to explore the new format if I hadn't started these tiny paintings. I also don't think that I would have seen the value in this new visual language if I hadn't become so obsessed with making many works from just one idea. in this case, letting myself get caught up in play pushed my work into new and exciting places. As much as I say that the art process is like solving a problem, that's not entirely accurate because the problem will constantly change in interesting ways as long as you allow it to. It's only through continuous making that you can really see the creative process bloom. Give yourself the freedom to move into different mediums. Maybe sometimes that feels like playing, but really, as long as you are being creative, you're learning something about yourself and your art. I agree with all of that wholeheartedly. I know we can't all always be working on stuff. I know I can't. Maybe you can, but I know I can't. There are times when I just don't feel like it. And nothing good comes of that. Good work does not come out of not feeling like it. But I agree that when you are feeling it and you're doing watercolors or the equivalent that look like this, absolutely it's time to keep going, right? So let's look at some of the shaped pieces that she's talking about, and let's look at how she achieved the shapes, because that is tricky. This piece is called Arches. This is 13 by 18, number 6 and number 8 cut wool and super bulky wool yarns on linen. It's finished with wool on the back. And let's look at another one. So these, when I say shaped, it's just what she said in the article. These are not squares or rectangles. These are irregular border pieces, meaning shaped. This one is called Cityscape, 12 inches, more or less, 12 by 14, 6 by 8 cut, 6 through 8, and super bulky yarn, finished with wool on the back. So that is a constant. The finishing the wool on the back, I think that's smart. Makes it real durable and safe. This is called Evening House. I think this one is my favorite. Number 6 to 8 cut. All about the same size. This one is 12 by 12. Same materials. This one is called Nightscape. And again, 15 by 12. So she's got things that are scaled quite similarly. This one is called Support. Oh, I like that. I like those 3 prongs going up. Isn't that something? And then kind of an archway. It looks in some ways like an entrance to a tent or a cave. It's very sculptural, this piece, isn't it? Interesting. So, all right, I think that's the last one of that. Yep, so wait a minute. Let's come back here. So looking at these shaped pieces, interesting. A couple of thoughts I'm having here that might help launch. I'm sorry, I look like a wild witch right now. Who knows? Who cares? Who cares? I'm just thinking about size-wise, these different shapes, what you can do with things that are shaped like this, because sometimes the question comes up when you're looking at shaped work, how do I display it? Well, this is actually the easiest type of work to display, because you could either get like a frame from an antique store, from the craft store, from the Goodwill, and you could put, if it doesn't have a back, put like a piece of cardboard to fit it, with maybe just a piece of fabric over it, that kind of thing, and put your shaped piece, attach it, right? You could sew it on there, right? You could attach it very well, give it lots of support, and put it in a nice open frame. Or you could set them into shadow boxes. Even places like IKEA has such a variety of shadow boxes. When they're all similar shapes, like 12 by 14, 12 by 15, 12 by 13, you could buy like all the same shadow boxes, right, and put them in the same way. It would be a real sight, right? What a beautiful display, seeing things that are like sizes that are open and available in pretty shadow boxes. Very modern, but the idea of doing a shaped piece is very modern, right? You would not call these traditional by any stretch of the imagination. What we really need to know with this is how to finish shaped pieces, and she gives us that in the article. So she says, trim the excess. So let's picture having a shaped piece, for example, arches, right? You have a piece and it looks like this with all these bumps coming up on here, and it's definitely irregular. You trim the excess foundation, meaning backing fabric, to about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, right? So seam allowance, if you're a sewer, around the edge. You definitely don't want it any closer than that, because if it starts to madly unravel, it's going to be like a quicksand moment, isn't it? You're going to be like racing against time. Fold the foundation fabric to the back, an iron flat piece in shape. So be careful if you're doing this, if you have used materials that are not wool, right? If you've used a real mashup of novelty fabrics that might have synthetic content, be careful about this. Usually, When you are ironing from the back, you're not going to have such a problem. Always put your press cloth in between. You always want a little face cloth or something damp in between, right? Test if you do have synthetics. Just give it a test. So you fold and wrap the piece around, then you snip slits into any areas that are too concave to allow you to fold the foundation back. So in other words, where you have just, and if you already sew or you've done cushions or something, you understand how this works in terms of the abstract shape of it. When you encounter a shape that you just cannot fold properly, you need to snip in a little bit more so you can get a nice crisp shape. Just be careful about all of the little thready threads, right, with any of your backing fabrics. Probably monk's cloth is going, of our traditional rug hooking backing fabrics, monk's cloth is going to fray the least. But I would still be very, very careful with your clipping, because if you clip in too far, is it all done? Does it need to be set on fire? No. But you might be looking at a patch or something aggravating, and that's not the way you plan to spend the day, fooling around with like a emergency repair, right? So just be careful when you're doing your snips. Glue any snipped areas with acid-free glue. That is the key, the acid-free part. Acid-free glue to keep the foundation from unraveling. Allow to dry. Continue to fold and iron the foundation back. So she's describing a process where you, again, with the arches, you're snipping, and this is labor intensive, right? This is not like a David Bowie wham bam, thank you ma'am. This is, you're snipping as you go, folding it under, and she's saying like when your snip comes too close to that finished piece, you want to glue that just to stabilize it, right? There are all kinds of liquid support products out there for textiles that unravel, because a lot of people, as you can imagine, I have a degree in costume construction. When you're dealing with things like lame and 100% synthetics that want to fray and play you, you're constantly looking for these different kinds of liquid brush on things that basically stabilize and shore up something that is quickly unraveling. There's lots of products like this that work. Glue is one of this family of products that are there to stabilize fabric. You just want to be sure, your key word is acid-free. You just want to be sure that it is acid-free long term, right? In the next few years, you're not going to see, you put the wrong product on, you're not going to see your part disintegrate into atoms. But we're just thinking heirloom, long-term, best practice, right? Once your excess foundation is folded and ironed behind the piece, so in other words, you've gone all the right way around the perimeter, it's all stabilized behind, iron a sheet of heat and bond, and that's one word, heat, the letter N, bond, ultra hold, one word, heat and bond, ultra hold, that is slightly larger than the piece to the back, paper side up and glue side down. Allow to cool and dry and trim the edges of the heat and bond glue paper close to the edges of the piece. Be careful not to snip any edges or loops. Peel off the paper. Iron a piece of wool, so it's like a double stick. If you're used to the idea of, like, for example, two-sided interfacing, this is the kind of thing that we're getting at. We're talking about a piece of paper that's functioning like a layer of textile that can be custom cut, so it's the ideal and perfect size that you can then, you still have a sticky side on top of it. Remember how she puts a solid piece of wool on the back to back everything. You could also use felt, right? You could use any fabric. You could use absolutely any fabric. Just think about the fraying. That's the one thing. So she's at this last stage where she's going to use high heat and press the iron to melt the glue under the wool, allowed to cool. This is all spelled out literally in this magazine. When the glue is dry, trim around the shaped piece with scissors, being careful not to snip any foundation fabric or loops. Okay, so she's repeating that because it bears mentioning twice, right? Cutting your loops is the one thing you don't want to do. That's really interesting, and as usual, Haley is super forthcoming and sweet and kind and an absolute living doll. So leave it to her to give so much information on doing something really cool like this. I'm going to look at some other articles briefly in here before we close this episode, but I just want to add, hold on one second. I just want to add, I love that she says in this article, essentially, I'm paraphrasing hugely, once you get going with a project or a thought, and you go down that rabbit hole, right? You're in that groove. You could do that for the next X amount of years, right? That could be the heart, the center, the heartbeat of all of your work that stems from the germ, the idea, the seed for the next few years. That is very possible. It could also be that you're going through a crazy time, and I can relate to crazy times. I can relate to this. I know that a few years ago, I was going through a really crazy time, and I started to, and I'll show them to you because I just brought them in, and I'm going to put them all behind me for one of the sets I'm working on for us to do our live show. I did a bunch of food faces, and they are all, hey, Teddy, are you there? Thought maybe he could get the food faces. They're for the carnival, right? Because I just had Jossie's party on Friday before cocktail time. They're like you throw a beanbag in, it's an open mouth, but they're all different styles and eras and periods and all different kinds of people, men and women, and different kinds of costumes. But I'm telling you, the point is, I started making these food faces. This is before I got into rug hooking and all this. This was like a few years ago. I mean, I had hooked a rug, but I wasn't my business at all. I was just a mom, and I wanted to do some party games. I could not stop making these food faces. It was like insane. Like, I mean, it was like it became a metaphor for my life. Just these food faces. I could not stop. I would wake up at crazy times of the night and early morning and just be like, oh God, I've got to do somebody with a Victorian collar and tomatoes. And then the next day I'd be like, oh, Elizabethan ruff or Anne Boleyn headdress. I mean, it was crazy. But it's this idea, depending on the kind of person you are and the way that you work, where your inspiration comes, when your inspiration comes, it can be fun and it can be cathartic. It can be extremely helpful to go down these crazy rabbit holes and just develop, whether you are painting food faces or doing 2x2 watercolors that will then be turned into lovely contained pieces of rug hooking art. Doesn't matter, right? Sometimes you fall into these places and you just think to yourself, instead of fighting against yourself and saying, this is crazy, what purpose does this serve? Think to yourself the way Haley was and say, you know, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm enjoying it. For whatever reason, I've made 30 something at this point. I'm thinking of her paintings. And what can I do with it now? Well, I'm going to turn them into textile art. I'm going to transfer them into what I do, rug hooking, and I'm going to turn them into wall art. So, you know, it's just validation, isn't it? That everybody does this kind of, most people do this kind of thing. And it's good to know, number one, that you are not alone if this is how you work too. And secondly, it's great to have that kind of little gentle push that says, go ahead and do it. See it through, whatever that feeling is, wherever it's taking you, see it through. Make sure you're done with it, right? You do it until you're done. And then you figure out later how you can translate it into other parts of your life and make that time useful. Because you want to justify time that you spend, right? Because your time is valuable, it means something. I bet you're a practical person because you're a rug maker. So it's just good to know. It's good validation to know that you can work down rabbit holes like this and then think, you know what, I'm going to make rugs out of them. Let me figure out how. And doing those shaped pieces, I think, was such an inspiration. Awesome, Haley. That's my favorite work of yours so far. I absolutely love it. Now, we mentioned at the beginning of the article, the first time we approached this issue of Rug Cooking Magazine. Hold on just a second. Let me see if I can find. That's the cover. Yeah, this article at the beginning, I'm not going to read it. It's by Lucy Walsh, and it's called Primalistic. And what's interesting about this article is Lucy is really, talk about language. She's establishing a new word, primalistic, because she's looking at rugs that are made in the primitive style but bear realistic touches. So, for example, 1776 house that we're looking at, primalistic enhancements around the path, right? You see there's shading around the path, roof line. So she's dropped in a skinny little line of either very thin wool strip or yarn to create that definition. Mary Jo Taylor did this for us in the last issue of Rug Cooking Magazine. Remember, she was showing us how to get contrast, looking at a black and white photo of her work and dropping in a dark line. Same kind of idea, roof line, tree base, fence, to add distance, right? Look at all these places where your eye is catching this small black line. Distance between the background and the large pattern in the front, beautiful spiral in the front. This is an effective method of creating dimension in a small design. Absolutely. So this article is about, and I don't have all the images up here because I hope that you will look at your copy or order a copy. This is Franklin Public House, 25 by 35. Franklin's detailed facial features capture his unmistakable likeness. Absolutely. It's a fairly realistic portrait. It is done in a graphic style, but even the movement of his clothing, the shape of his body, all of this is very well articulated. It's not exactly primitive, but it's not realistic either. So primalistic is a great go-between word, isn't it? It doesn't say who this one is by, but we know that this is by. Now help me out here. Remember the tavern signs? Remember when we covered the book more than once? Tavern signs, yes, wait a minute. Mary Jo, and her husband begins with a G. Have you got it? Can you write it in the thread if you've got it? Mary Jo. Oh, I feel like it has a G and an M in it. I'll see if it comes to me. I'm sure that this is her rug. This is her design anyway. But it's not cited there for some reason. So another beauty, that will be a to be, not gimbal, something like that. I know you'll get it. Primalistic. So, and this too qualifies as primalistic, certainly. Just the outlining, the shade, the attempt to shade, right? This is not realistic. We don't typically see this in our everyday lives. It's very sort of Magdalena looking. It's very antique looking, but there is an attempt at semi-realism that makes it not a completely shape-driven composition. Melanie says, that is my favorite article and style. Melanie, this is absolutely my favorite style as well. I absolutely love it. Interesting. It's just an interesting thought because there's so many shades in between. Ryan says, I love your food faces so much. Ryan, I'll show you all the food faces. I'm going to put them. Oh, did you see them on my page? I love them too. And when I look at them, I feel like making more food faces. I mean, I'm quite well right now. I'm pretty well. But man, it was fun. Wait till you see. They would make good hook trucks too, I think. American Gothic. Oops, keep going to the wrong one. I'm sorry. It is like the American Gothic, isn't it? It's called Halloween Gothic, this piece. 20 by 22. Primalistic hooking is unmistakable around the head. Shirt cuffs, white pumpkin, stem, waistband, face of the pumpkin man. Face of the pumpkin man. That must be a horror movie. Pumpkin lady's dress is a great example of shadowing at the waist. Absolutely. Sleeves, folds of her dress. Yeah, absolutely. You know what that reminds me of? I'm such a pig, but the shading, this is one of the easiest things that you can do, primalistic, right? Shading at the top of a dress is just easy. It's just easy. I love this idea. I love coining a new phrase, and it's extremely helpful. Let me see what else we've got in this magazine. It's filled with art. It's filled with articles. This is a great issue. I always say that, but it is getting better and better. And then, you know what? Let me scroll up because then I can see we go to the Duncans. Let me scroll up from there. Let me see where we are here. Hold on. Okay, so then we're at Haley. Let's push a little bit. Yeah, let me push a little bit further along. I just want to see this. Oh, this is where we left off. So this is another article in the same magazine. This one, as you can see, is called The Pretentious Pumpkin. Let me join you at that page. I want to get to the same place as you. There it is, The Pretentious Pumpkin. Pumpkins everywhere. Project and photography by Julie Thomas of the Old Tattered Flag. And this is under a feature of the magazine that is called Designer Showcase. So I wanted to show this to you because I want you to be aware that this is in the magazine, The Pretentious Pumpkin, as a pattern that you could blow up. This is done in 8.5 cut wool on linen, and it is 16 by 20, so not huge. That's a good size, but it's just a beautiful kind of spin on a Halloween design. I wonder if I showed you yep, the pattern for it is on the following page. So, sometimes it's good to know before you buy what is inside the magazine. Well, this is a pattern that's in the magazine that's certainly well worth having. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this issue today. This is one of the throwbacks from the past issues. This is a blast from the past. That's one of the features too. That it's an excerpt from Rug Hooking Magazine, September, October, the year 2000. So this is called How to Hook Pumpkin Moonshine with a lesson on inspiration from famous painters. Now, I love this. This is right up my alley. Melanie, they were good, weren't they? Thank you, Robin. Carl and Mary Jo Gimber. There we go. Thank you so much. Pumpkin Moonshine. So this was done. This was done by Patty Patrick, designed and hooked, Bloomington, Indiana, 1999. It is 15 by 15 square, cut wool on polyester cotton. So polyester cotton, that could be poly cotton rug warp, something like that. It could be any backing, right? So it's not one of our traditional rug hooking ones, but it obviously worked very well for a wide. Oh, it's not a wide cut. It's a number 4 cut. Interesting. So this article is cute because it's not only about rug hooking and a beautiful seasonal design, but it's also about fine art. So she says rug hookers draw inspiration from many sources, from nature to memories to favorite photographs. Many fiber artists are also inspired by works from other media, especially paintings, right? That ties right in with Haley's article, both contemporary and historical. Most of us have one or more favorite artists. Whether you design your own hooked pieces or adapt purchased patterns, think about putting into your own design something that reminds you of your famous artist's work. It will make your hooking experience all the more fun and meaningful. Now remember, this article is from, what was it, 2000. She says it'll make your... There are many ways to do this. For example, if Monet is your favorite, you might incorporate the colors or style of his garden paintings into your work. Let me come back to you here. Of course, his water lilies, his bridge, all of his iconic stuff, his poplars, right? All of that stuff. Think of the lovely watery blues that you could get from a casserole dyeing section. Absolutely. Also with things like this, I'm gonna add, if you go with this idea of, say, in this case, she has, I did it again. I got to delete that scene. Obviously incorporated the feel of a Van Gogh, right? She said, my favorite artist is Van Gogh, has always been Van Gogh. The sky in Pumpkin Moonshine was directly inspired by a visit to a traveling exhibit from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. Viewing more than 70 paintings in one show is a great opportunity to see the recurring themes and color schemes. Van Gogh loved to paint green skies for both day and night, as well as stars in motion. Think of Famous Starry Night. So absolutely, this is super true. Of course, part of the reason his skies look blue is because they're yellow, and green is because they're yellow and blue, and all of those little dit dots and swirls meeting. But this idea that she's giving is a great idea because she's saying, for example, if you have this design and you've just got a moon or a few stars in the sky, she has added the swirl, right? She has created the swirl. That is a hat tip to Van Gogh. It is a great sky, Stephanie. It really is. The shadowy barn, right? And the sort of tilled rows, right? Farmland leading up to the dark barn. Those 2 stripes of tract, like drawing us in. I love the springy spiral on the pumpkin. The color changes within the pumpkin. There looks like there's a piece of greenery that is reading as a bat as well, but it's probably something leafy and organic. The sky is the showstopper, isn't it? And she has done it in a very primalistic style, right? Before the word was even coined. Patty has taken her favorite artist and infused the sky with the spirit of Van Gogh, but still very primitive, still very rug hooking oriented, right? I mean, it doesn't read as a painting. It still certainly reads as a rug hooking composition. But I absolutely love this piece. And what I started to say earlier is to take that thought one step further as a just in case. For people who, if you do not see yourself as an artist with a capital A, and you love this idea and you say, ooh, my favorite artist is Cézanne or whoever, and I would love to incorporate Degas. I would love to incorporate a dance or something like that in my piece. How can I go about that? I'm not an artist with a capital A. Sometimes what you could do, instead of this literal description of inserting or adding lines that are in the style of your favorite painter or painting, instead of that, you could alternately use the colors of the artist, because there are very few artists who don't evoke a certain color palette, right? I mean, even Degas does all of his sort of theatricals and people peeking from the backstage. Those are quite dark, very theatrical colors, lots of navies and indigos and purples, lots of chartreuse, right? That whole Paris scene. Most, not just Van Gogh and not just Monet, but most artists evoke a certain color palette. Certainly Maud Lewis, right? It's hard to think of one that doesn't. So alternately, if you're thinking, I've got my Sharpie hovering over my pattern, I would like to do a hat tip to my favorite artist, but I can't quite get there. Maybe instead think about executing your whole piece in the color palette that is kind of linked or synonymous with that particular artist or with that particular work, because that would also bring you to the same place, even without this is kind of a hybrid, the idea that we're looking at here. If you picture this piece, not with the browns, and for me, not the green sky. I still think of Van Gogh as a blue sky with yellow flecks, like a starburst. But if you picture this exact piece, and you can keep the orange because Van Gogh loved orange, blue, orange, yellow, right? But if you picture this piece in more Van Gogh colors, leave the orange, but let your eye put in that indigo blue, that midnight blue, right? That nightshade kind of a blue, that poison colors. All of those rich, dark, high luster blue night sky colors with a bunch of crazy yellows, like broken stardust up in the sky. Even with this composition, not adding the swirls of the starry night, if it was in Van Gogh colors, I think any composition would still read as Van Gogh. So I'm just using Van Gogh as a placeholder because she used him in this particular piece. But I think you could do it with many artists, and you would evoke the style and the feel of that artist with a color palette rather than with design changes. So it's just another option. It depends on how you feel and what direction you feel like going in, project to project, right? It's going to change as you go. Let's leave it there because I'm starting to get a real sore throat again. I'm not 100% at all. And I do want to look at the graffiti article. I think there's at least one other article I want to look at. We'll do that tomorrow because I will be with you tomorrow. Let's see. Yeah, tomorrow I want to look at, yeah, I definitely want to look at this article tomorrow. That'll be what we do. Art or Scars. Rug cooking inspired by urban graffiti. Story by Susan Gabby Trotz. Also photography by Susan Gabby Trotz. So this will be a great article. I'm going to show you all of her pieces. Graffiti that is based on rug cooking that is based on Toronto downtown graffiti that she found during her walks during the COVID time, which is still upon us. But interesting. That'll be an interesting one for us tomorrow. Let's look at that. And then I might take some time tonight, if the children allow me to breathe and think and have a moment to myself. I might be able to look at Atha a little bit. We can do some highlighting as to what's happening in this. I keep opening to the same page, and it just gives me stomach cramps. It's so good. It's so good. So let's do that tomorrow. Let's finish up Rug Cooking Magazine and look at Atha. And then I'm thinking about what to do on Friday. I want to have a good seasonal blast with you this month. So I'll think about what to do with the Friday episode. It will be wonderful, but we're just not there yet. We're together tomorrow, so we'll do all of our tomorrow stuff in the meantime. It is, Melanie, the art is so different. It's so different. Those graffiti pieces, so inspiring. I'm not a huge fan of graffiti because personally I'm not that into modern art. Isn't that awful to say that out loud? I'm just not. But those pieces really moved me. I think part of it is the context. And just the idea appeals to me so much that you could be walking around a city and that you would make these great, grand discoveries, seeing bits of someone else's art that make you want to create, hook drugs based on these pieces. To me, that is like the ultimate magpie situation. It's very attractive because don't we all hope, inspiration-wise, that you're just going to leave your house, start just wandering around like a nomad, and just bump into a bunch of prospective composition ideas? I mean, it's an ideal situation, isn't it? And it happened to Sarah. So we'll hear about that tomorrow. I forgot I was going to try to get in touch with her. I'll see if I can send her an email and see if she might log on or something tomorrow. I might not reach her because I'm so I'm so late with the idea. Have a great afternoon and evening, everybody. And remember, tomorrow's not my usual day, but I will be with you tomorrow, same time, noon Eastern Standard Time. Have a great night. If you need me, I am at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. Look at Ribbon Candy Hooking website as well. There's tons of new products up right now. It's very seasonal and exciting right now. Let's do this October thing together. I will see you. They are the best, the magpie situations. Oh, blessings.